Okay, good afternoon. This is John Bushka, and that's the picture of the Duke of Gloucester Street, well, and intersection again with Boundary Street, I think, where my father picked me up when um, the day I was expelled from William and Mary in 1961. I want to play for you the tape, some of the tape I made during the oral history on February 4. I want to play you some more of it, about half an hour's worth. So let's just go ahead and have at it. It starts at 53. Part I want to play starts at about 53 minutes into the tape. It's a 3-hour tape. We'll play about 30 minutes. Thanksgiving dinner, and the Williamsburg Inn. And then after that, we drove down to Jamestown and looked at Jamestown, that old church and everything. And then there's a glassware thing that we went to where they make, with flame and everything the way they used to. We visited that, and then we came back, and I came back to the dorm, and Silas wasn't there. And then Friday morning, I didn't think much of it. I thought, well, maybe he just went away, because the stuff, I think most of his stuff was in the room. See, here is where it gets, I'm not absolutely sure of everything, but this is the best I remember.
Of course.
Friday was a normal day of classes. And so we had English, what I had was calculus and physics at 9, physics at 11, and then English at 1. And then on Friday afternoon, I had physics recitation at 2. And something a little quirky happened at the recitation, but the instructor, that wasn't the professor, was a younger instructor. They were playing with the gyroscope in the lab, and somebody made a comment that one way you can prove that the Earth isn't flat is with using a gyroscope. Well, that's true. The flat earthers, there is an experiment to prove that the Earth isn't flat, so you can show it with a gyroscope. I remember that. And the instructor grabbed my leg for no reason. Weird. That was a little weird, so that's a little strange. That maybe says something about the instructor. But anyway.
Were you?
No, I was a little. Yeah, I was a little
Alarms?
strange. I was a little shocked when he did that.
Yeah,
I thought that
of course.
isn't really appropriate.
No.
But he did. So then when we were talking about the gyroscope, and flat Earth and everything. So then I believe I went home, or not home, I went to the dorm, went to the dorm, and nothing was going on at the dorm, and nothing had changed at the dorm. I think I went over to Rogers Hall and studied, and then came back at 5 o'clock. And some of the screenplays I've written, I said I got together with this music friend. But as I'm pretty sure that I went back to the dorm for some reason around 3 in the after the physics recitation, and then went to Rogers Hall, which is near Wren. And I think some of those halls were renamed. I don't know if that's still the same as it was then, but it's where it was the science building, the chemistry building. And it had a library on the 4th floor where people studied. It was a very nice place to go. And I came back to the dorm just about 5 o'clock, and there was a note on the door, taped on the door, kind of folded with a little piece of tape folded, and anybody could have looked at it, but it was sort of folded so you wouldn't see. And so I opened it, looked at it, and it said that due to recent room inspections, we've noticed prescription medicine, non-prescription medicines, and the dean of Ben wants to talk to you about the medicines. This is weird. Now, why the day after Thanksgiving? This is a little bit weird. And I went in, and
so you go directly from your door?
well, I did. I went into the room
Sure.
first, and nothing had changed in the room. And again, remembering, I'm pretty sure that Silas's stuff was most of it was in the room. It didn't look like he had moved out, or I did not have the impression he had yet moved out, but I did have the impression that he had gone away for Thanksgiving, which he wasn't supposed to do, you know. But I thought this is a little odd that he's not there, even though his stuff is there. Well, maybe they've moved him to, if they've moved him to another room because of me, why is his stuff still there? You know, because the clock radio was still there, which he wrote about in an English theme, and everything was still there. And so I walked over to and it was to the door to Wren Hall, and it's about 700 feet. I've looked at a map on Google, and it's around 700 feet from Brown Hall to the entrance to Wren Hall. It's, you know, it's more than 1/10 of a mile. That's and I walked, and it's November, and the sun is setting earlier because and it was not cold. It was sort of a little bit foggy and misty, and it was maybe 60 degrees. It was pretty comfortable outside, 60 to 65 degrees. It wasn't cold at all. And
how were you feeling? Were you nervous?
Yeah, a little bit. I thought, but what is this? But I grabbed the medicines, or some of them, and I went in, walked up to the entrance of the Wren building, and the door was open. And in the screenplay, I say that there's a receptionist there who sends me upstairs to make it look like they were waiting for me. I don't remember that there was anybody in there, but I went in. There must have been, though, because somebody had to tell me where his office was. So I guess there was. Yeah, there would have been somebody there.
You're now that's to meet with Carson Barnes.
Yeah, with Carson Barnes. Now, it would be a little strange on a Friday afternoon after 5 o'clock to have somebody even have help there working.
Sure.
That's a little strange. And Wren Hall, I believe, has been renovated inside since then a lot. So it's not set up the way it used to be. But you went in, and then you walked up. The staircases, I remember, turns directions as you go upstairs and then on the second floor are the offices, and one of the doors was open, and I went in, and the dean was there, and it was kind of dark in the office. There was kind of a green light on his desk, and there might have been a low light, you know, but there was a green. I remember the green light, which I thought was strange.
Had you ever met him before?
No. Okay. And there was a dean of students named Lambert.
Yes.
Who had addressed the students. There was a dean of men and a dean of women, and there was a president who was Davis Pascal was his name, I think.
Yes.
Was it Pascal or Pascal? I'm not sure, something like that. And so the dean sort of debriefed me. I took out the medicines and put them on and said, well, I just have nasal congestion. And he said, oh, he wasn't very worried about them. And then we started talking about, you know, life with the boys in the dorm. And toward the end of the conversation said, okay, you know, I suppose I'm a latent homosexual.
Had he asked you, or how did that
He didn't actually ask. He kind of kept prodding a little bit, you know.
Okay. So you felt that he was getting at something.
Yeah. And now here's something that's important that I've not said in the book. If you say you are a latent homosexual, that might be something that the political left could call a gender identity, because if latent means you've not actually acted, you've not actually chosen to have sex with anyone. And you could be a latent homosexual and have sex with, try to prove that you're a man and get a girl pregnant, for example, and then pay the consequences. That happens to people, you know, that is what could happen. But if you say you're a latent homosexual, that means you get aroused once in a while by men that have the right physical appearance, or that you somehow or have the right kind of connection with. But typically when somebody says that, it's only 1 in 1,000 people that they encounter. It's, you know, it's very, very small percentage of people that they encounter when they feel that way. It's not, I get the impression with with men that have a strong sex drive and I think sex drive, again, is something that has effect with your brain wiring, and with pruning, and having a strong sex drive can be pruned out. If you don't think you're going to use it, it's going to get weaker. and the desire for it is going to get weaker. And the possibility might be you wouldn't be able to consummate a marriage. I think that might be how it works. But it seems like some young men have a desire to score, you know, and have intercourse, and that they get life points by having intercourse and proving they can procreate. And there was definitely this feeling the way some of them talked. And even later on, 4 years later at the University of Kansas, some of them would talk that way, but it wasn't as oppressive. You know, they understood it was not as bad as this was, but we'll get to that. So.
But did you feel ambushed, surprised? Like
Yeah. I would that why is he doing this on the day after Thanksgiving, which in most places would be a holiday? Now, the logical thing was maybe he had to arrange it with Silas and arrange him to go someplace else and find another room, and maybe this was the most convenient way to do it. But then why did maybe they left the stuff in the room so that I wouldn't know that something was going on. Maybe, but this is pretty weird, you know.
Sure.
If you're trying to keep somebody something from somebody, this is weird. And this is why this is like, I've always been fascinated in the movie plot idea, because this is a bit of a mystery. And a couple of other mysterious things have happened in my, you know, a lot of quirky things have happened over the years, but this and maybe 2 other incidents that have happened are really quirky, are really mysterious.
Well, so tell me, let's stick with the meeting. So he sort of steers this conversation away from medicine to your relationship with other boys in the dorms, relationship in a non-sexual sense, and kind of corners you and traps you, if that's a fair word. And so I said latent homosexual. But if you say you're a latent homosexual and because you get aroused, getting aroused is not a chosen behavior. Of course.
It is simply a physiological reaction to what you have, your brain's becoming conditioned to think is important. It has significance. But it still is not a chosen behavior. Therefore, that would imply if the left wanted to make, if they could make a separate gender identity out of latent homosexual, if they wanted to. Now, they haven't done this very much, but they could. If they wanted to follow their own ideology to the letter, they could. So that's just something I didn't say in the book, but that's something I've wanted to say. This fits in later on with what's going to happen 50 years later. Okay, so so that was true. So anyway.
But you had never told anyone.
No, that's right. No, and there never been. Well, I think one time I was joking to myself, I was soliloquizing myself in the shower one time, homosexual on the loose. One time I was saying that to myself. Somebody thinks I'm a homosexual on the loose. I remember maybe somebody overheard that or something when I was by myself in the shower, communal. But I may have said that one time to myself. But the dean promised. The dean then. This is where it gets interesting.
So what does he say next?
He says, "Well, I'm glad you told me this," and so forth. And he said, I should call your parents. And so I told him that my parents were visiting the Smiths in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I knew the address, which I won't give out here, but I knew what the address was. It's southeast of downtown. And it's a place I had been before. And the house that it's in is really interesting. And that will come up in a minute. But so all he had to do was call information and get the number and see if they could get the, because he had the address. And I said, you can do that if you want. But my parents had gone on from taking me and my friend to dinner and then to Jamestown on Friday. They had driven about 340 miles to Charlotte, North Carolina, and to visit these friends. And I had been in that house that they have one time in 1955, and I still remember that house real well. And also remembered the church that they went to, and the organ recital we went to there that one weekend in 1955 that I was real impressed with. So that had stuck in my mind.
So your parents are in that house when they get a call.
Yeah, that's right. So I go back to the dorm room, and the one other thing the dean said that's real important is, you don't need to worry about this. We aren't going to ask you to leave school or not. Some persons who have looked at my screenplay and have thought that's the most shocking thing of the whole story is that he said that.
Well, of course, because
I have gotten that feedback from credible people. That's the most shocking thing of all, that he made that promise and then broke it.
But as far as you knew, on that day, that right. was the truth.
Yeah.
So you leave that meeting, and how are you feeling?
So I'm not that anxious about it because he's given me that reassurance.
Sure.
But so the weekend, I don't remember the rest of the weekend real well. I went to the movies, I think, once with the music friend, and my parents called on Monday, and they came back. We'll get to that. But I want to say something about what happened in Charlotte. The particular house, it was a one-story Rambler, but there was something very interesting about the way it was laid out that sounds like a setup for a horror movie. The house was sort of bisected into two sections, and there was a hallway from the kitchen and living room that went back to the area where the bedrooms were, and maybe past some utility areas and some other things. But where these two hallways intersected at a perpendicular angle, there was a nightstand, and there was a white phone right on that nightstand. And I don't know why, but from my childhood, from the visit in 1955, I still remembered that nightstand and the white phone. I just do. Things can be so prophetic, when you're 11-year-old, that this is going to matter someday, to this phone. I mean, this is weird. And so what would have happened, my parents liked to play bridge in Canasta, and so did the Smiths. So they probably were playing cards after eating leftovers. And very likely the girl was out on a date. The girl would have been there, but under the impression someone came and took her on a date or something. She wasn't there for a lot of the evening, from what Father said. The phone would have rung around a little after 8, after they finished dinner. There was a TV set in the living room, and in those days it was the Berlin Wall and everything was going on, and that was the kind of stuff that was in the news then. And so the father, we'll call him, let's make up his name, we'll call him Ralph Smith, let's call him that, who had moved from Washington area to start businesses and be an entrepreneur in North Carolina. I don't know exactly what businesses he was in. He had been a building contractor and that kind of thing. Maybe he was building houses or something. But he gets a call, and so he would have been the person to answer the phone, and the rest of the family would have been playing cards, and everything. And so we would have called my father, whose nickname was Jack, John Bush, they would call him Jack, to the phone. So when the Jack went to the phone, my mother would not necessarily have been able to overhear the conversation. It would have been out of sight because of the way this house was arranged.
Sure.
And so the dean asked, my father if they could come back and talk to him. And so they decided they would come back on Tuesday. Now, my father was in a precarious position. What does he tell my mother about this? There are three possibilities. I could have gotten a girl in trouble. I could have broken the honor code, or I could be a homosexual. Three things.
And
he probably realized that it had to be one of those three.
He just said, you have to come back.
Yeah, we would like you to come back to Tuesday.
Okay.
And my father had to wonder what this was.
Sure.
I don't think I know their marriage. I know what their relationship was like. I don't think he told her.
Okay.
Until Sunday. Now, my impression is, I don't believe they drove back home to Arlington and then drove back down to Williamsburg again. I believe they stayed at the Smiths until Monday morning. And the Smiths were very good friends. They would have let him do that. And so I don't think he told her until Sunday or Monday. So this was not good for them.
And you had no idea they were coming back?
No, I knew. Well, no, I didn't. He said he was going to call them.
Okay.
And then they would be in touch. But
sure.
I didn't know for sure. So I wasn't too concerned. Monday is a normal day with classes. Monday night I'm studying, and I remember reading the English that Eric Fromm essay on symbiosis, on loving or something. I remember reading that for English class that night, studying on my lower bunk. But I wasn't really worried. But Silas is nowhere to be seen.
Still.
And I think the stuff is still in the room. But I didn't worry about it. But this is strange, And what in the world are they doing? And Tuesday morning, Monday night, I got a call, and somebody came to the door and said I had a call, and that there was just one phone in the dorm then. And so it was my father, and they said, yeah, we have to talk to the dean on Tuesday morning. Could we have dinner? So they came, and we went out to dinner. And I had kind of an evasive conversation, but I don't remember that the conversation was particularly melodramatic.
You didn't tell them that?
No, I did not. I did not tell them that I was in the conversation.
Okay.
So, and then I came back. Now, Tuesday morning was chemistry lecture, and we had a lab exam the week before. We had lecture exams, which I had done well on, and lab exams, which were tricky. And I was going to get a lab exam back that I didn't think I had done particularly well on later that day in lab. But I went to the lecture, and the professor made a couple of real weird jokes in the lecture. I remember that. It was kind of strange. And then I went and met my parents. We agreed on meeting my parents outside of the hall, out of Rogers Hall, and they would tell us what he said, okay? And I was still believing I was staying in school. I sort of thought that. Okay, I'm going to skip just a little bit of it and resume about a minute later and play just a little bit more of this. take this over to. Still wasn't there, but his stuff is there and everything. And so I meet my parents outside of Rogers Hall, and there's a little parking lot. And my father asked me to walk toward Duke of Gloucester Street, and they'll pick me up and around the corner. So I do, and that's about a 400-foot walk, from there. And so I walk over to the corner, and then my parents drive around. I think it's Prince George Street is what's in front of the Brown Halls at Prince George Street, Boundary Street and Prince George Street and around. In those days, you could drive on Duke of Gloucester Street.
Okay, yeah.
And and in those 10 minutes, my parents had to decide what they were going to do.
So they had met with Dean Barnes that
morning. And they had just been told, that I had to leave. But they didn't tell me there that I had to leave. They had to talk to themselves about what to do for 10 minutes before they would pick me up. Now, after spending this weekend with my brother probably being kept in the dark all weekend in Charlotte with the Smiths and what effect that had on them, and. So I walk and I'm standing on the east corner because Wren Hall, you're facing west when you're facing Wren Hall, and they come around in that Ford Galaxy, and I get in the back seat, and my father says, "Bill, this is going to come as a blow to you, but we have to take you out of school." Those are exact words.
And how did you feel?
Shocked, but
angry. I mean.
I felt like I had been. I felt like I had been lied to. Yeah.
You had been lied to.
Yeah, and that's the thing that's gotten people's attention about the screenplay.
And so, can I ask? You were not officially expelled. They told you to leave, and were kind of counting on your parents being afraid of the secret getting out, or how did it happen? I don't know legally whether it was an expulsion or whether it was voluntary. I don't know what the legal status was. You'd have to. I've never tried to because it's never been litigated. So we've never. I honestly don't know what that would take some research to find out. Well, so I've read Dean Carson Barnes has a self-published memoir here in Special Collections, and he doesn't mention you by name, but he does say that for cases of expulsion, he would have had to go to Lambert, who's the dean of students.
Okay.
So probably the two of them, as best I can guess.
Okay, yeah, because my father said, when we were in the dorm, he said the president of the college said that he had to leave.
It's certainly possible it went up to the president as well.
Yeah, and so that was the reason for the lie.
Okay.
But most people, when they read the screenplay, particularly one friend, who coached me writing the screenplay, are just horrified that this one thing, that happened. So,
well, you're 18 years old. You're in a very vulnerable place, and this guy who's many years your senior in a position of authority lied to you. I think that is why it's getting people's attention.
And so I remember I don't remember why we had to carry the mattresses downstairs, because I don't think we brought our own mattresses, but my father pointed to a semen stain and says, "This is why you're not a homosexual, because you could ejaculate." Well, that's not true. That's totally, everything people believed was just totally wrong, at the time, just totally wrong.
So go ahead.
So we rode home. It was a very cold afternoon. It was the coldest day of the fall so far, and went back to the house that night. A very cold night, and back home, and the next chapter of life had to start for me. But so also writing home, I remember my parents said I must never mention homosexuality again. That's how it was in 1961. Now, in a few years, even by the middle of when I was at grad school at the University of Kansas in the dorm again in 66, 67, it wouldn't be as bad. Then my story would continue with my eventually being in the Army and writing a book because of the parallelism between, intimate spaces in a dorm and then intimate spaces in military barracks. The same arguments were being used. And I thought that was the basis of that first book. So I this is the first cut, and there will be more excerpts. And this conversation is about a 3-hour tape. And I do thank you for listening.